For decades, philosophers have been kicking around this classic puzzle about life and death. But what happens when that puzzle breaks out of the classroom and gets hardwired into a 2-ton machine that's barreling down the highway? Well, all of a sudden, the philosophical gets very, very practical. It becomes a real-world programming problem that, honestly, we all need to solve. So let's just cut right to it. Here's the big question. Should a self-driving car, the one you own, be programmed to sacrifice you in an accident to save other people? It's a shocking thing to even think about, right? But it's the absolute core moral challenge of this new technology. Think about it. What a human driver faces a terrible, unavoidable accident, they react on pure instinct. There's no time to think, no time to weigh the options. But a machine? Well, a machine is totally different. It can be programmed ahead of time to make a choice. And that means we, the people building it, have to decide what that choice is going to be. This is basically a high-tech, real-life version of the famous trolley problem. You probably heard of it. Should you pull a lever to divert a runaway trolley so it hits one person instead of 5? For years, this was just an abstract debate for a philosophy class. But now, with self-driving cars, any one of us could literally find ourselves in the path of that trolley. And this, right here, is the crucial point. This is not a thought experiment anymore. For the engineers actually designing these cars, it is a literal programming problem. The car is going to do exactly what it's coded to do, which means we have to decide what to tell it. So, a team of researchers, Jean-François Bonnafon, Iyad Rahawan, and Azim Sharif, decided to dig in and figure out what people actually want. And what they found, well, it was this fascinating and maybe deeply human contradiction. Okay, so check out this chart, because what it shows is really wild. On the one hand, most people agree that, yeah, in principle, cars should be utilitarian, programmed to save the most lives possible, even if that means sacrificing its own passenger. But when you ask them what kind of car they would buy, they overwhelmingly want the car that protects them, the passenger, at all costs. And that, my friends, is a classic social dilemma. Everyone agrees it would be better for society if all cars on the road were programmed to save the most people. But when it comes time to buy, everyone is tempted to get the selfish car. And if everyone does that, well, the roads actually become more dangerous for everybody. See the problem? The researchers realized that to get to the bottom of this, they needed more data, like a lot more. If you really want to build an ethical framework that people will actually accept, you can't just survey a few hundred people in a lab. Nope, you have to ask the world. So they came up with something just brilliant, a viral experiment they called the moral machine. The idea was simple. Instead of some boring old survey, they built this interactive, almost game-like website. It would throw these tough moral choices at you and, in the process, collect people's ethical preferences on a massive global scale. And let me tell you, they did not shy away from the hard questions. The scenarios got into some really provocative stuff. Should the car spare a human over an animal? What about the young versus the old? Pedestrians versus its own passengers? Or, get this, an executive versus a homeless person, someone crossing the street legally versus a jaywalker. They really wanted to see what factors truly sway our moral compass. So they launched the website, hoping they get a decent response. But what happened next? Well, it went way beyond their wildest expectations. The moral machine absolutely blew up. It went viral. In just about 18 months, it collected over 40 million decisions from people in more than 200 countries. It became one of the largest social science experiments ever done, creating the world's first ever global map of what we think is right and wrong. The whole thing was just this explosive chain reaction. First, a big science article drove some traffic. Then, a video from the YouTuber PewDiePie sent this huge wave of visitors. But the real madness started when it hit the homepage of Reddit, the front page of the internet. So many people flooded the site all at once that their servers just completely crashed. They'd accidentally created a global phenomenon. So, at this point, this is no longer just some academic project. The data from the moral machine and the huge global conversation it started began to have a direct impact on actual car companies and even governments. And right here, you can see that collision happening in real time. Initially, you had a senior executive at Mercedes-Benz saying their cars would be programmed to save the passenger no matter what. But then, around the same time, the German government's ethics commission released a code that flat out forbids making these choices based on things like age or gender. Total opposite approaches. Well, after a pretty massive public outcry, Mercedes' parent company, Daimler, had to walk that statement back fast. Their new official position is that their programmers and cars are not authorized to choose between human lives. They say they'll implement a solution that is both legal and, this is the key part, socially acceptable. The public's voice, that global conversation, had clearly been heard. So, because of incredible projects like the Moral Machine, we now have this unprecedented map of what humanity thinks about these impossible choices. We have the data. The only question left is a big one. Who actually gets to write that morality into the final lines of code?